Good evening. I'm Joshua Free, and welcome to another edition of Mardukite Theatre.
She was running then, running for her life. Her destination was unknown, but the direction was sure. It was the same that the others had gone, been sent or forced, away. Out of the heart of the city she fled, the skyscrapers and traffic sounds slowly being replaced with still rural darkness. She was tiring, but each threatening shadow stoked the inner fires of adrenaline anew. There was no stopping, no turning back. Only the unyielding sense of urgency remained within her. Beyond the perimeter of the city, she found herself among a tranquil sea of once houses. Suburbia, they had called it, a place where the well-to-do were thought to reside not so long ago. Someone among them might have offered her solace. Of course, not so long ago, the need for her flight would not have been, nor the changes she was enduring. Now the buildings lay cracked and crumbling, as vacant and forgotten as she would surely become, perpetually lost in the desolate wilderness outside the realm. As her feet pounded the ground with her crossing, she gained a sense of a second set of footsteps, distantly echoing her own, followed by a third and a fourth. Must go faster. The illness she endured had been plotting against her actions from the start. It became abundantly clear to her now that she must take an action. She could not keep this pace much longer. Already she would be too weak to stand for herself if the need arose. She rounded a corner on what seemed like the millionth abandoned street that she had come across since leaving the city. Her eyes widened as she realized she was leaving the openness of the main roads. A few darkened homes lined the short distance of the strip of road to a dead end. Beyond the wide fields of an undeveloped country lay exposed. Was she ready for this? Whether it was intuition or simply the override of personal control caused by fatigue, she darted off the short road to the spindle fence porch of the last home on the block. Crouching down, she focused on steadying her breath while she peered outward. There was little illumination to aid her efforts, furthering the difficulty in slowing her heart rate. There was no sound to be heard, however, no footsteps, and this provided some comfort. Perhaps the accompanying footfall in the distance had been her imagination, paranoia. Her gaze softened, no longer pierced in anxious terror. She had almost let her eyes close when 5 hooded figures stepped out of the gloom, not but 10 yards from where she hid behind the railings. They watched her direction ominously, neither speaking or moving. There was no more hiding or running. She was spent. She was caught. Squeezing her eyes tight, she waited patiently for her fate. Time is perhaps one of the most misunderstood aspects of material reality. Even the most intelligent of the scientists in every age has been perplexed by the true consequences time has in the universe. In their folly, man has time and time again sought to map and control it by observation, whether in relation to the movement of the stars or the local planetary system, marked in rocks and stone circles all over the planet. The ebb and flow of its form being bent and manipulated like light, it was no wonder that Jenny felt she had been crouched on the abandoned porch at the end of the darkened street for an eternity. Her eyes were still covered by her hands, and nothing had yet broken the stillness that had actually settled only moments before. She was afraid to open her eyes, afraid to face what she might see or might happen to her next. That she had not been rushed and assaulted yet only increased the anticipation, but enough was enough. She pulled her arms down, peered out into the darkness. The figure stood, unmoved, watching. She certainly wasn't going to be able to hide or run. They knew where she was. She returned the passive stare. They were all robed and hooded, perhaps 5 or 6 of them, the robes intermingling with one another to create the illusion of a large, singular, unified mass. Maybe there was only 4, she thought. It didn't matter. Even one was one too many to be stood up to in her current state. There was a chill in the autumn air, forcing Jenny to begin to shiver with the lack of muscular heat created and absorbed from movement. Her body was simply aching too much. This all had to end, whatever the end may be. She stood then, pulling the long handle strap of her messenger bag over her shoulder. She considered the action as a sign of courage, but still did not advance forward toward the group, silently huddled together. When had they even begun to chase her, she thought? When did they even notice her slipping out of the city? "Who are you?" she called out finally, frustrated with the stagnation of events. Only silence. She shifted her weight and sighed. "No, seriously, who the fuck are you? And why are you chasing me?" One of the bigger members stepped out from the middle of the pile and slowly removed their hood. A bit of fabric meshed together, and then a hand cautiously brought up a lit flashlight. The person illuminated their face in a non-frightening manner, and Jenny's burrowed eyebrows quickly lifted. "Hansen?" He nodded. "Yes, Jenny. Sorry for scaring you, but you see, a frightened and sick reptilian who's running can be just as dangerous and unpredictable as you might find a small rogue gang." "Where have you been?" she asked quickly, dismissing this apology. "Around." "I'm going to get in a lot of trouble for running away like this," she said. "From who?" She thought a moment and said nothing. "Yeah, exactly," he chuckled, starting forward to meet her on the steps. "You can't go back." What am I going to do?" He made a wide circular motion with his arm, culling her down. "Why don't you come with us, and maybe we can all sit down and figure that out together?" She strained to look past him. "Who is we?" He smiled. "Look, you kind of trust me, right? We had a nice chat. You know some things about me, we know things about each other. It's cold out here." Then he repeated, "Why don't you just come with us?" Jenny glanced around, uncertain of what to do. Should she trust him? He seemed to know so much about her condition and other people that were enduring the same fate. Hadn't he been the one she was seeking for solace all week in the first place? "Besides," he added abruptly, "really, what choice have you got?" Seeing him smiling warmed her a bit, and she smiled in response. "I suppose you're right." She came down the stairs off the porch and walked slowly by him toward the group, and he followed. Approaching the cloaked figures in the crisp air and darkness did little to supplement the ease that Hansen had worked to put her at, so she made calculated breaths and steadied herself. Before she had even reached half the distance of the group, Hansen was right beside her, his presence reassuring. "All right, guys," said Hansen, motioning to Jenny. "This is Jenny. Jenny? This is the guys. All right, now let's get the hell out of the cold." The band of young folk traveled the outlands with ease. They knew the way and guided Jenny through the labyrinth of obstacles and terrain that was laid out by both humans and nature. The lights and sounds of the Denver arcology faded into the background of awareness as the party headed westward toward the developments nearest the mountain foothills. With the chase and introductions now out of the way, not to mention the thought of getting out of the cold, everyone other than Jenny seemed to be in good spirits. This was their domain, and they were headed home. They jumped and laughed with one another, pulling Hansen into the jokes and conversation. Meanwhile, Hansen kept a constant eye on Jenny, aware of her discomfort. "We're making good time," he assured her. "Should be there now before you know it." "I don't get it," she responded, clearly thinking of other things. "How do you get away from slipping in and out of the city, or school for that matter?" He laughed. "Well, as I mentioned the other day, I have enough academic credits to get out of there, so they don't ask too many questions when I don't show up now and again for my one scheduled twice-a-week class." They were walking uphill now, and his words were getting spaced slightly farther apart as his breathing increased. "Besides, I try to make it to that one just so no one does ask any questions." No one seems to have taken notice that I'm almost 19 years old either, so I'm not worried. That doesn't explain the slipping in and out of the city. I keep a low profile. When someone's watching, which is always, I appear to be doing what I'm told. I don't stand out, and when I do, I work it into a joke or some other egotistical mind game that they might accept. Running with these guys, I've learned a thing or two about the systems. I've just been trying to ride this one out as long as I can, going in and out, keeping watch. I don't pretend to understand any of this, really. I don't know if I can believe a lot of the theories these guys toss around about their ancient scriptures, but I know they really aren't of the world anymore. They are becoming, no, they are something else altogether. And this means you too. To the world left behind, they are just a bunch of freaks, the byproduct of the world humans have created, left with a disease that doesn't kill them, but they wish they were dead after the citizens alienate them as they do, or worse. So why do you surround yourself with us freaks then, she asked. Why bother at all? Why not use your knowledge of the system and go back and do something back there? The seemingly permanent smile was immediately gone from his face. I already told you about my girlfriend, he said sternly. Then he relaxed a bit. And as far as the system is concerned, it's not a game meant to be won. I've seen evidence of this, and so have these folks here. They say it's a serpent devouring its own tail, and I guess I can't really argue with that. I don't really care about the ESP and psychic shit these kids are playing with out here. I just can't stomach the suffering of life any longer. And I suppose that, combined with the protection of my girlfriend, is the reason I feel the best good I can do for the planet is out here. They had been following alongside a main roadway, moving uphill for longer than Jenny expected. Her legs and feet felt like rubber. Her arms ached as they swayed in rhythmic motion to her hike. Had she not felt so horrible, this might all actually be an incredible experience or adventure, but her mind would not halt with projecting dismal images and causes for worry to her mind's eye. Everything felt weird, but the movement, as painstaking as it was, kept the muscle and nerve tremors at bay, and the discomfort of her physical condition was replaced by an overwhelming sense of coldness. Were they there yet? The last stretch of journey, the roadway wound abruptly, almost cutting back on itself, leading farther up the mountains. Marching a few dozen yards beside the road, the party moved in the opposite direction, following what appeared to be an elaborate driveway, intersecting the main highway. Not needing the road, the group cut across a small field of sagebrush and thorny weeds to reach an adobe wall, fronted by a large iron gate. While many of the features and rear of the property were difficult to see in the lacking light, the surrounding terrain gave every indication that this fortification was set between the road and a large cliff drop-off. They neared the gate, but Hansen directed Jenny to follow him around the side of the wall, where a small break allowed them all to pass without disturbing the gate. Seems like a bit of a security issue, Jenny thought, reflecting on the very means by which she had just escaped the incomplete boundaries of the walled city. Beneath the barrier wall was a large building, what would have been described most likely as a mansion in the old world. It was not so much tall as it was incredibly long. It was unusual in that it did not appear to be designed like most buildings, which are generally square and symmetrical. This one showed a kind of curve in the front-facing wall that matched the curvature of the cliffside landscape. The color of the building was a bright beige that seemed to make it stand out even in the dark of night. Strange choice, Jenny thought. I would have chosen a more discreet location. This seems a little obvious, she said finally, whispering to Hansen. Well, I've never had a problem. How long have you been here? Once, Jenny. We took care of that. Me personally? The roadway is hardly ever used, if at all, anymore. The group, they call themselves the Babili Brotherhood. It's apparently connected to something, from what I'm told, with in the making for everything in the world went haywire. As far as their occupation of this humble home, I think 2 or 3 years maybe, not long after it was abandoned, or whatever actually happened to the occupants. They probably just live in the Arco now along with everyone else. A lot of people did that. There was no actual need to go through the motions of physically selling the property here because Lucien already owns everything. She nodded wordlessly. Not surprisingly, given their actions at the perimeter wall, the smart party did not approach the main entrance, but again moved to the now far side of the building. Running along the building on the ground nearest the foundation were a series of pits, allowing an underground floor to open windows or, at the very least, receive sunlight. Each of these were 6 feet deep, and the surrounding earth was kept carefully clear by thin brick and cement barriers, extending the height of the pit. Each of the windows were covered by iron rod rails. At the 4th window, the group stopped, and one of the as yet unnamed members of the party carefully jumped down to the bottom of the pit and removed what appeared to be an unsecured section of bars. They effortlessly pushed open the window and disappeared for a few minutes, returning with a short ladder that was leaned against the mouth of the pit. "Well," Hansen said, extending a hand to Jenny, "down we go." It's a video book. A video book? Video book. Kind of like an audio book, but it's not on CD. Right. Nah, it's on YouTube. Give people something intelligent to watch once in a while.